The sound of a body hitting gravel cut through the cold November night at Fort Bragg. Hazel Mitchell lay sprawled on the rough ground outside the base recreation center, dirt and small stones clinging to her oversized gray hoodie and faded jeans. The smell of whiskey hung thick in the air, emanating from the 3 soldiers who stood over her, like predators circling wounded prey. "You think this is some kind of tourist attraction?" Staff Sergeant Mason Brooks, the largest of the 3, sneered down at her. His 6'3" frame cast a shadow even in the dim parking lot lights. 23 other soldiers had gathered around, some still holding their beer bottles, others pulling out phones to record what they assumed would be entertaining footage of another civilian learning their place. "Military installations aren't playgrounds for lost little girls." Hazel pushed herself up slowly, her hands trembling visibly as she brushed the dust from her knees. Her brown eyes, wide with what appeared to be fear, darted around the recreation area. The Eagle's Nest Bar and Grill, the unofficial off-duty headquarters for Fort Bragg's elite units, buzzed with activity behind them. Through the windows, more soldiers watched with casual interest, none moving to intervene. I was just looking for the registration office," she stammered, her voice so quiet it barely carried over the distant sound of helicopters running night drills. Her slight frame, maybe 5'4" and 120 pounds, made her look even smaller next to the towering soldiers. "Registration office?" Corporal Blake Turner stepped closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. His breath reeked of bourbon and poor decisions. "Who exactly do you think you are? Some new civilian contractor? Or just another badge bunny looking for a soldier boyfriend?" He shoved her shoulder, not hard enough to knock her down again, but enough to make her stumble backward. The stumble lasted exactly 1.3 seconds. In that brief moment, something shifted. Her feet automatically repositioned themselves shoulder-width apart. Her knees bent slightly, her center of gravity lowered imperceptibly. Her arms came up just enough to protect her core. It was a stance that would have made any combat instructor nod with approval. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the defensive position vanished, replaced once again by the hunched, frightened posture of a scared civilian. Private Connor Hayes, barely 21 and fresh from advanced infantry training, noticed. He'd seen that stance before, drilled into him during close-quarters combat training. But when he opened his mouth to speak, Sergeant Amber Cross, the 3rd member of Mason's impromptu welcoming committee, cut him off. "Connor, mind your business," Amber said, though her eyes remained fixed on Hazel. There was something about the way this woman moved, something that didn't quite match her appearance. "This doesn't concern you." Mason grabbed Hazel's worn canvas bag, dumping its contents onto the ground. A water bottle rolled away. Some crumpled papers scattered in the wind. A protein bar. Nothing that screamed military or official. No identification badge, no credentials, nothing to justify her presence in a restricted area. "No ID, no authorization, no business being here," Mason declared, kicking the items around with his boot. "You've got 30 seconds to start walking back to wherever you came from, or we call the MPs and have you arrested for trespassing." Hazel knelt to gather her belongings, and Private Oliver Chen, watching from the bar entrance, noticed how she folded the scattered papers. 3 perfect creases, edges aligned with military precision, despite her shaking hands. She tucked them into her bag with movements that were economical, efficient, practiced. "Please," Hazel said, still not meeting anyone's eyes directly. "I have an appointment. I'm supposed to report to—" "Report?" Blake laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Civilians don't report. They show up. They visit. They tour. But they don't report." He turned to the growing crowd. "Hey everyone, we've got ourselves a wannabe soldier here. Should we give her a proper Fort Bragg welcome?" The crowd's energy shifted, some laughing, others looking uncomfortable. Master Sergeant Floyd Jackson, a grizzled veteran with 17 years of service and 3 tours in Afghanistan, watched from the doorway. Something about this situation felt wrong. The woman's body language was all over the place, submissive one moment, subtly tactical the next. He'd seen plenty of civilians accidentally wander into restricted areas. They usually either blustered with indignation or apologized profusely. This woman did neither. 20 seconds, Mason announced, checking his watch with theatrical precision. Hazel stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "I'll wait," she said simply, walking to a concrete bench 20 feet away. She sat down, pulled out her phone, and began typing with her thumbs. To most observers, she looked like any other millennial absorbed in their device. But Corporal Ryan Fletcher, who worked in intelligence, noticed she held the phone at an angle that prevented anyone from seeing the screen. And her typing pattern was too rhythmic, too deliberate for casual texting. "I said leave, not make yourself comfortable," Mason barked, striding over to her. Before he could reach her, an alarm sounded from the training grounds. Not an emergency, just the standard signal for a night exercise beginning. Most of the soldiers automatically turned toward the sound, their training kicking in. Hazel didn't flinch, didn't even look up. Her lack of reaction to a sound that made even experienced soldiers instinctively check their surroundings was another small detail that Floyd Jackson filed away. "Brooks!" Colonel Carter Williams's voice cut through the night air like a blade. The colonel, 47 years old, with silver creeping into his regulation haircut, had emerged from the administrative building adjacent to the recreation center. "What's going on here?" Mason snapped to attention, his entire demeanor changing in an instant. "Sir, we have a civilian trespasser refusing to leave the premises." Carter's eyes swept over the scene, the crowd, the 3 soldiers surrounding one small woman, phone still recording. His expression remained neutral, but Floyd could see the calculations running behind his eyes. This had all the makings of a public relations nightmare. "And you needed 20 soldiers to handle one woman?" Carter's tone was deceptively mild. "Sir, she claims to have business here, but has no identification or authorization." Amber interjected, her voice professional but with an undertone of uncertainty. Carter walked over to where Hazel sat, still absorbed in her phone. "Ma'am, I'm Colonel Williams. What brings you to Fort Bragg tonight?" Hazel looked up and for the first time made direct eye contact with someone. Her brown eyes were calm, almost serene. "I'm waiting," she said simply. "Waiting for what? For things to proceed as they should." It was an odd answer, cryptic without trying to be mysterious, matter-of-fact without being confrontational. Carter frowned. "Do you have authorization to be on this base?" Hazel tilted her head slightly, considering the question as if it were more complex than it appeared. "Authorization is a matter of perspective, Colonel." Mason couldn't contain himself. "Sir, she's obviously disturbed, or—" "I didn't ask for your opinion, Sergeant," Carter said coldly. He turned back to Hazel. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me to the security office. We'll sort this out there." Hazel stood, smoothing down her hoodie. As she did, the sleeve pulled back slightly, revealing part of a scar on her forearm. Not a clean surgical scar, but the jagged kind that came from shrapnel or improvised weapons. Ryan Fletcher saw it and nudged Oliver Chen, who was still recording everything. "Before we continue with this story of hidden identity and military justice, did you know that 73% of veterans struggle with civilian integration after service? If you're finding value in stories that honor our military heroes, please hit that subscribe button below. Your support helps us share more stories about the brave men and women who serve in silence. Click subscribe now and join our community of 2 million viewers who believe in respecting those who protect our freedom." The group began moving toward the security office, Mason and Blake flanking Hazel like guards escorting a prisoner. The crowd followed at a distance, unwilling to miss whatever was about to happen. As they walked, Hazel's gait caught Floyd's attention. She moved with her weight balanced on the balls of her feet, ready to pivot in any direction. Her arms swung naturally, but never far from her center, maintaining what combat instructors called the ready position. Inside the security office, the fluorescent lights revealed more details. Hazel's hoodie, which had looked simply worn in the darkness, showed specific wear patterns, the right shoulder more faded than the left, consistent with rifle carry. Her boots, which appeared to be simple hiking boots, had been modified with additional ankle support, something commonly done by special operations personnel for long-duration missions. "Run her name," Carter instructed Specialist Noah Thompson, who manned the security terminal. "Name?" Noah asked, fingers poised over the keyboard. "Hazel Mitchell," she replied, her voice steady. Noah typed rapidly, accessing the standard civilian database. "No records found, sir. No driver's license, no social security matches, nothing." Mason smirked. "Because she gave a fake name. Probably some mentally ill." A sharp sound interrupted him. Hazel had dropped her bag, and as she bent to retrieve it, her hoodie rode up slightly. Just for a moment, less than a second, the edge of a tattoo was visible on her lower back. Black ink, military precise lines, but covered again before anyone could make out details. "Try the military database," Floyd suggested from the doorway, his instincts screaming that they were missing something crucial. Carter looked at him sharply. Why would she be in the military database? Call it a hunch, sir. Noah shrugged and switched systems, entering the name again. The screen flashed. Classified. Authorization required. The room went quiet. That message didn't appear for regular personnel files. It only showed up for special operations, intelligence assets, or command-level officers. What's your authorization code? Noah asked Hazel. She remained silent. Mason's frustration boiled over. This is ridiculous. She's playing games. Some wannabe who probably read too many military novels and... The door burst open. Sergeant Major Jack Morrison, the senior enlisted advisor for the entire base, stood in the doorway, his face flushed from running. Stop! Everyone stop right now! Morrison was 61 years old, 6 months from retirement, and had seen everything the Army could throw at a man. He'd served in Desert Storm, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, and a dozen classified operations in between. In all that time, Floyd had never seen him look panicked, until now. Jack, what's wrong? Carter asked. Morrison's eyes locked onto Hazel, who gave him the slightest nod. Sir, I need everyone except you and her to leave this room, right now. Sergeant Major, I don't... Now, sir! Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. This is a Level 7 security issue. Level 7. Floyd had only heard that designation twice in his entire career. Both times involved operations so classified that even knowing they existed required special clearance. Carter's face paled. Everyone out! Now! The room emptied quickly, but Mason lingered at the door. Sir, this is... Sergeant Brooks, if you don't leave this instant, you'll be court-martialed before morning, Morrison growled. Mason left, but his frustration was palpable. Outside, the crowd pressed closer, trying to hear through the door. Connor Hayes stood apart from the group, his instincts telling him that something significant was happening, something that would change everything. Inside the office, Morrison pulled out a satellite phone from his pocket, one of the encrypted models used only for the highest-level communications. He dialed a number from memory. This is Sergeant Major Morrison, Fort Bragg. Authentication code, Whiskey 779er Alpha. I need immediate verification on a Ghost Unit operative. Yes, sir. Understood. He handed the phone to Carter, who listened for 30 seconds. His face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, disbelief, shock, and finally, something approaching fear. Understood, Admiral. Yes, sir. Immediately, sir. Carter handed the phone back to Morrison, then slowly turned to Hazel. I apologize, ma'am. We didn't know. Hazel's posture shifted subtly. The hunched, submissive stance disappeared entirely. She straightened to her full height, which wasn't much, but somehow she seemed to fill the room. Her eyes, which had seemed fearful and uncertain, now held a calm intensity that made both men want to step back. You weren't supposed to know, she said, her voice different now, authoritative, measured, carrying the weight of command. That was the point. Outside, the crowd grew restless. Mason paced back and forth like a caged animal, his pride stinging from being dismissed so curtly. This is complete nonsense, he muttered to Blake. Some crazy woman wanders onto base and suddenly it's a Level 7 issue? Please. This intense moment reminds us how crucial clear communication is in military operations. Modern tactical smartphones with encrypted channels have revolutionized field coordination. These ruggedized devices feature night vision compatibility, GPS tracking resistant to jamming, and battery life extending 72 hours in extreme conditions. Military-grade encryption ensures operational security while enabling instant intel sharing between units. 20 minutes passed. The crowd grew larger as word spread through the base that something unusual was happening. Soldiers from the night shift joined those from the bar, creating a gathering of nearly 50 personnel. Finally, the door opened. Morrison emerged first, his face grave. Carter followed, and then Hazel, still in her civilian clothes, still looking like nobody special. But something had changed in the way Morrison and Carter positioned themselves, slightly behind her, unconsciously deferential. Sergeant Brooks, Carter called out, his voice carrying across the crowd. Front and center. Mason strutted forward, confident that he was about to be vindicated. Sir, you physically assaulted this woman, correct? Mason's confidence wavered slightly. Sir, I was protecting the base from an unauthorized... Yes or no, Sergeant? Did you put your hands on her? Yes, sir. Corporal Turner, Sergeant Cross, you participated as well? Blake and Amber stepped forward, less confident now. Yes, sir, they replied in unison. Carter looked at Hazel, seemingly asking for permission. She gave another slight nod. Gentlemen, ladies, what you're about to learn is classified. Phones away, now. He waited while everyone complied, though with obvious reluctance. You've just spent the last 45 minutes harassing, threatening, and assaulting a senior officer, conducting a classified assessment of base security and personnel readiness. The silence that followed him was absolute. Mason's face went from red to white in the span of 2 seconds. That's impossible, Mason stammered. Look at her. Hazel took a step forward. The movement was small, but somehow it commanded everyone's attention. When she spoke, her voice carried despite being barely above a conversational level. Sergeant Brooks, what's the first thing they teach you about battlefield assessment? Mason's military training kicked in automatically. Never assume, always verify, ma'am. And what did you assume about me? He couldn't answer. The truth was too damaging. You assume that because I'm small, female, and dressed like a civilian, I couldn't possibly be a threat or deserve respect. You assume that your size and position gave you the right to put your hands on me. You assumed that 23 witnesses would validate your actions because they shared your assumptions. She pulled out her phone, the same one she'd been typing on earlier. Every second of this encounter has been recorded and transmitted to Joint Special Operations Command. Your treatment of what you believe to be a civilian has been documented. Your willingness to use physical force against someone you perceived as weak has been noted. Your pack mentality and encouraging others to participate has been analyzed. Blake Turner's legs seemed to give out slightly. He had to lock his knees to stay standing. Hazel continued, her voice never rising, never showing emotion. The Office of Professional Standards will receive my full report within the hour. But I'm curious, Sergeant Brooks. If you're willing to assault someone you think is a helpless civilian, what exactly are you fighting to protect? It was a question that hung in the air like smoke from a discharged weapon. No one had an answer. Connor Hayes found his voice. Ma'am, respectfully, not everyone participated. Some of us tried. I'm aware, Private Hayes. Hazel's eyes found him in the crowd. Your attempted intervention was noted, as was the fact that Sergeant Brooks physically prevented you from acting on your conscience. She turned back to the 3 main perpetrators. You had multiple opportunities to choose differently. When I sat on that bench, I was giving you time to reconsider. When Colonel Williams arrived, you could have stepped back. When Sergeant Major Morrison entered that room, you could have realized something was unusual, but your arrogance blinded you to every warning sign. Quick reminder, if this story of undercover assessment is keeping you engaged, please give us a thumbs up. That simple click tells YouTube you want to see more military stories with unexpected twists. Also, what do you think? Should military leaders go undercover more often? Comment below. Floyd Jackson stepped forward from the crowd. Ma'am, if I may, some of us noticed the signs, the stance, the scars, the way you moved. Why didn't you identify yourself sooner? It was a fair question, and Hazel considered it before answering. Because, Master Sergeant, the point wasn't to test your ability to identify an undercover operator. It was to test how you treat people you perceive as powerless. The measure of a military force isn't how it treats its enemies or its equals, it's how it treats those who can't fight back. She let that sink in before continuing. Every base in the continental United States is being evaluated using similar methods. Some locations have passed with flying colors. Others, she looked meaningfully at Mason, have revealed serious cultural problems that need immediate correction. Captain Julia Stone, who had arrived during the confrontation, raised her hand tentatively. Ma'am, what happens now? Now? Now we deal with the consequences of choices made tonight. Hazel pulled back her sleeve, fully revealing the scar Ryan had glimpsed earlier. It was a defensive wound, the kind you get when you put your arm up to block a knife attack. This scar came from a mission in Kandahar province. I got it protecting a civilian family from Taliban fighters, the same kind of civilians Sergeant Brooks felt comfortable pushing around tonight. The parallel wasn't lost on anyone. Morrison stepped forward. Should I convene a disciplinary hearing, ma'am? Hazel was quiet for a moment, studying the 3 soldiers who had assaulted her. Mason looked like he might be sick. Blake was trembling visibly. Amber had tears running down her face. Not yet, she said finally. First, I want to show you something. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small tablet. With a few taps, she projected an image onto the white wall of the security building. It was a photograph of a ceremony. In it, a younger Hazel stood in full dress uniform, receiving a medal from the President of the United States. The image quality was perfect, allowing everyone to see the details, the Navy Cross being pinned to her chest, the rows of other decorations already in place, the respect in the President's eyes. 6 years ago, she said quietly, Operation Neptune Shadow, classified still, so I can't give you details. But I can tell you that 7 Americans came home because of actions taken that night. 3 of them were Marines from this base. Several people in the crowd gasped. They remembered when those Marines had returned, wounded but alive, from a mission that had gone catastrophically wrong. The official report had been heavily redacted, but everyone knew that someone had done something extraordinary to get them out. I've been shot 4 times, stabbed twice, and blown up once, Hazel continued, swiping to show other images. Training photos, operational meetings, always with faces other than hers blurred for security. I've served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, and 6 other countries I'm not allowed to name. I've lost friends, saved lives, and made decisions that keep me awake at night. She turned off the projection and faced them again. But tonight, for 45 minutes, I was just a lost woman looking for the registration office. And in that time, you showed me who you really are. The weight of judgment in her voice was crushing. Mason finally found his voice. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I didn't know. That's exactly the point, Sergeant. You didn't know. So you defaulted to bullying. What if I had been exactly what I appeared to be? A civilian contractor, nervous about her first day, trying to find where she was supposed to report? Would your behavior have been acceptable then? The answer was obvious to everyone. Your careers are likely over, Hazel said bluntly, not because you failed to recognize me, but because you revealed character flaws that make you unfit for the uniform you wear. The United States military exists to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Tonight, you became the very thing we're supposed to stand against. Just as Hazel's true identity carries weight, your financial security needs solid backing. Specialized military insurance providers now offer comprehensive coverage specifically designed for active duty and veterans. These policies understand deployment risks, provide worldwide coverage, and include identity protection services crucial for personnel with classified backgrounds. Rates start lower than civilian equivalents. She paused, letting the full impact of her words settle over the crowd like a shroud. The transformation in the atmosphere was complete. Where there had been mockery and amusement, now there was shame and fear. However, she continued, and everyone leaned in slightly, hoping for mercy, I'm going to offer you one chance at redemption, not forgiveness that you'll have to earn, but a chance to prove that tonight was an aberration, not your true nature. Mason straightened slightly, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Private Hayes, Hazel called out. Connor stepped forward, confused. You tried to intervene. Why? Ma'am, it wasn't right. 3 against 1, and you weren't fighting back. My mother raised me better than that. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. You showed moral courage tonight, Private. That's harder than physical courage, and rarer. She turned to Morrison. Sergeant Major, I want Private Hayes promoted to Private First Class, effective immediately. Ma'am, Connor was shocked. Leadership isn't about rank, Private. It's about doing the right thing when everyone else is doing wrong. You demonstrated that tonight. She turned back to the 3 main offenders. You 3 will report to my temporary office at 0600 tomorrow. Come prepared to explain why you should retain your positions. Bring your service records, your fitness reports, and letters from 3 soldiers who would trust you with their lives. If you can't find 3, don't bother showing up. The challenge was clear. In a unit as tight-knit as Fort Bragg, finding 3 people willing to put their reputation on the line for you after tonight would be nearly impossible. Dismissed, she said quietly. No one moved for a moment, unsure if she had the authority to dismiss them. Then Morrison barked, You heard the Admiral. Dismissed. Admiral. The word rippled through the crowd like electricity. They'd known she was senior, but Admiral? The youngest admiral in Navy SEAL history, and they'd shoved her to the ground like a common trespasser. As the crowd began to disperse, Hazel called out one more time. Master Sergeant Jackson? Floyd stepped forward. Ma'am, you knew something was off. Your instincts were correct. In my report, I'll be recommending you for intelligence training. The military needs more people who can see past the obvious. Thank you, ma'am. As Floyd walked away, he heard Hazel say quietly to Morrison, "How many more bases, Jack?" 14, ma'am. The results have been mixed. They always are, but that's why we do this, to find the rot before it spreads. We're about to reveal something that will change everything you thought you knew about Hazel. But first, if you're enjoying this story, remember to hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens when true authority meets arrogance. The next morning arrived gray and cold, matching the mood that had settled over Fort Bragg like a funeral shroud. Word had spread through the base faster than a California wildfire. By 0500, everyone knew about the incident at the Eagle's Nest. By 0530, speculation about the mysterious admiral had reached fever pitch. Mason Brooks stood outside the temporary office that had been established in Building 7, an unassuming structure typically used for administrative overflow. He'd been standing there since 0545, his dress uniform immaculate, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. In his left hand, he held a manila folder containing his service record. His right hand was empty. He hadn't been able to find 3 soldiers willing to write those letters. Blake Turner arrived at 0550, looking like he'd aged 5 years overnight. His folder was also thin. Only 1 letter from a young private he'd helped through basic training 2 years ago. Amber Cross showed up at 0555, and surprisingly, her folder was thicker. She'd managed to get 4 letters, though Mason suspected at least one was written out of pity rather than genuine trust. At exactly 0600, the door opened, but it wasn't Hazel who appeared. Instead, Connor Hayes, wearing his new PFC insignia, stepped out. "The Admiral will see you in 5 minutes. She's finishing a secure call with the Pentagon." The Pentagon. Mason felt his stomach drop even further. Those 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Finally, Connor opened the door again. "Enter." The office had been transformed overnight. Maps covered the walls, marked with red and green pins. A bank of monitors showed what appeared to be live feeds from other bases, and behind a simple metal desk sat Hazel Mitchell, or rather, Vice Admiral Hazel Ghost Mitchell. She was still wearing civilian clothes, but now Mason could see what he'd missed before. The way she sat was pure command presence. Her eyes, which he'd dismissed as fearful, were actually cataloging every detail, missing nothing. Her small stature, which he'd seen as weakness, was actually an advantage. People underestimated her, revealed their true selves. "Sit," she said simply. They sat. She opened a tablet and began reading. Staff Sergeant Mason Brooks, 11 years of service, 2 tours in Afghanistan, Bronze Star with Valor for actions in Helmand Province. She looked up. Impressive record. Until last night. Mason said nothing. There was nothing to say. Corporal Blake Turner, 6 years of service, 1 tour in Iraq, commendation for excellence in logistics management. Another pause. Your efficiency reports show steady improvement. Until last night. Blake stared at his shoes. Sergeant Amber Cross, 8 years of service, combat medic, saved 17 lives during the Battle of Marja. Hazel's voice softened slightly. "You've been a hero, Sergeant. What happened?" Amber's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know, ma'am. Group mentality, I guess. I saw the others doing it and I just went along." The same group mentality that makes units effective in combat can make them dangerous in garrison, Hazel observed. "The question is, can you tell the difference?" She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the base coming to life with the morning PT formations. "Do you know what Ghost Unit 7 is?" All 3 shook their heads. "It's a joint special operations unit that doesn't officially exist. We handle missions that are too sensitive, too politically complicated, or too morally ambiguous for conventional forces. We operate in the spaces between spaces, fighting wars that will never be acknowledged." She turned back to them. "Last year, my unit was in a country I can't name, hunting a target I can't describe. We had perfect intelligence, perfect positioning, perfect conditions for the strike, but when we got there, the target was surrounded by civilians. 37 women and children to be exact. The room was silent except for the hum of electronics. By the rules of engagement, we could have taken the shot. Collateral damage within acceptable parameters. The target was high value enough to justify it. My team was in position, waiting for my order." She walked back to the desk but didn't sit. "I didn't give it. We let him go. It took us 6 more months to get another shot at him. And in that time, he killed 43 people. But those 37 civilians went home to their families that night. Mason found his voice. "Ma'am, why are you telling us this?" "Because, Sergeant Brooks, leadership is about making the hard choice, not the easy one. Last night, you had a choice. 3 soldiers against one seemingly helpless woman. The easy choice was to assert your dominance, to show your strength. The hard choice would have been to show restraint, to investigate further, to protect rather than persecute." She finally sat back down. "You all failed that test. The question now is, what are you going to do about it?" Blake raised his hand tentatively. "Ma'am, are we being discharged?" "That depends entirely on you." Hazel pulled out 3 folders from her desk. Option 1. You accept a general discharge, leave the service within 30 days, and this incident is sealed in your record. You can start over in civilian life. The thought of leaving the military clearly devastated all 3 of them. Option 2, she continued. You accept reduction in rank, forfeiture of pay, and reassignment to the worst posting the Army has to offer. But you stay in uniform and have a chance to rebuild your careers from the ground up. What's option 3? Amber asked. Hazel's slight smile was predatory. Option 3 is you volunteer for something special, something that will either make you better soldiers or break you completely. She pulled out a 4th folder, this one marked with classification stamps. Project Redemption, a new program I'm developing for soldiers who have shown poor judgment but have the potential for rehabilitation. 6 months of the hardest training you've ever experienced. Physical, mental, emotional, and ethical challenges designed to strip away your preconceptions and rebuild you from the ground up. If we complete it, Mason asked. Your records are cleared, your ranks restored, and you become part of a new unit I'm forming. A unit dedicated to protecting civilian populations in conflict zones. You'll spend your careers being the shield between the innocent and those who would harm them. And if we fail? Dishonorable discharge and possible criminal charges for last night's assault. The choice hung in the air like smoke from a firefight. It was a gamble with their entire futures. Mason spoke first. I'll take option 3, ma'am. Blake nodded. Same, ma'am. Amber took a deep breath. Me too, ma'am. Hazel studied them for a long moment. Understand something. This isn't forgiveness. This is opportunity. You'll earn forgiveness through sweat, blood, and transformation. The person you were last night needs to die for the soldier you could become to live. She stood, indicating the meeting was coming to an end. Report to Hangar 9 at 1300 hours. Bring nothing but your basic gear. Everything else you'll need will be provided or earned. As they stood to leave, Mason turned back. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why give us this chance after what we did? Hazel was quiet for a moment. Because, Sergeant, I've made mistakes too. Had moments where I let prejudice or assumption guide my actions instead of principle. The difference between a good soldier and a bad one isn't that the good soldier never fails. It's that they learn from their failures. She moved to the window again, watching a group of new recruits struggling through an obstacle course. Besides, some of the best soldiers I've ever known started as the worst. Sometimes it takes falling to learn how to stand properly. Leadership like Hazel's doesn't happen overnight. Online military leadership certification programs now offer advanced tactical training from home. Accredited courses cover strategic planning, crisis management, and command psychology. Veterans receive 40% discounts, and active duty can use education benefits. These programs translate directly to civilian management positions with average salary increases of 35%. As the 3 soldiers left, Connor entered with a sealed envelope. Ma'am, priority message from JSOC. Hazel opened it, read quickly, and her expression shifted. Whatever was in that message was serious. Private Hayes, she said, her voice taking on a different quality, urgent, focused. I need you to quietly gather the following personnel: Master Sergeant Jackson, Sergeant Major Morrison, and anyone else from last night who showed good judgment. Have them here in 15 minutes. Tell no one else. Yes, ma'am. Connor left at a run. Alone in the office, Hazel made a secure call. This is Ghost Actual. Authentication, Tango 77 Whiskey. Yes, sir. I received the message. Understood. I can have a team ready in 4 hours. Yes, sir. I understand the implications. We'll handle it. She hung up and stared at the map on the wall. A new red pin needed to be added, this one in Mumbai. Something was happening, something that required immediate attention. The assessment mission at Fort Bragg would have to be cut short. When the requested personnel arrived, Hazel didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you is classified beyond your current clearance levels. By hearing it, you're accepting temporary elevation to secret-level classification. Are you willing?" They all nodded. At 0300 local time, the U.S. consulate in Mumbai intercepted communications suggesting an imminent attack on American interests in the region. The attack is scheduled for 72 hours from now. We don't know the exact target, but we know it's big. Floyd Jackson leaned forward. "Why not send an established team, ma'am?" "Because all our established teams are being watched. The enemy knows our playbook, our personnel, our methods. They don't know about me being here, and they certainly don't know about you." The implications were staggering. She was suggesting forming an ad hoc team from Fort Bragg personnel for a black operation in India. "I need volunteers," Hazel continued. "This is strictly voluntary. It's dangerous, off the books, and if something goes wrong, the government will deny all knowledge. But if we succeed, we save potentially hundreds of American lives." Morrison was the first to speak. "I'm 6 months from retirement, ma'am, but I didn't join the Army to play it safe. I'm in." Floyd nodded. "I've been behind a desk too long. Count me in." Connor looked uncertain. "Ma'am, I'm just a PFC. I don't have the experience." "You have something more important," Hazel interrupted. "You have the courage to do what's right when everyone else is doing wrong. That's exactly what this mission needs." One by one, 7 soldiers volunteered. It wasn't a large team, but it was a motivated one. "We leave in 4 hours," Hazel announced. "Go pack light, 1 bag, civilian clothes only. Delete all social media posts from the last week. Tell anyone who asks that you've been selected for a training exercise in California. Meet at the auxiliary airfield at 1700 hours." As they prepared to leave, Mason, Blake, and Amber appeared in the doorway. They'd been listening. "Ma'am," Mason said, "we know we lost our right to ask for anything, but let us come. Let us prove ourselves." Hazel studied them for a long moment. The smart move would be to say no. They were compromised, emotionally unstable from the night's events, and untested in her methods. But something in their eyes, desperation mixed with determination, made her reconsider. "You get one chance," she said finally. "One mistake, one moment of the arrogance you showed last night, and I leave you in Mumbai with nothing but your passport and an economy ticket home. Clear?" "Crystal clear, ma'am. If this story of hidden leadership touched your heart, check out our next video about a combat medic who saved an entire platoon while wounded. The link is appearing on your screen now. Subscribe to never miss stories of military courage." As the room emptied, Hazel remained behind, staring at the photographs on the wall. Each one represented a mission, a choice, a life saved or lost. She touched one particular photo, a young SEAL who died under her command 3 years ago. He'd been cocky, arrogant, reminded her a lot of Mason Brooks, but he had also been brave, loyal, and in the end, heroic. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she whispered to the photo, "even the ones who don't deserve it." Her phone buzzed. Another encrypted message, this one with coordinates and a single word: accelerated. The timeline had moved up. Instead of 72 hours, they had 48. 4 hours later, the auxiliary airfield at Fort Bragg was shrouded in evening mist. A unmarked C-130 Hercules sat on the tarmac, its engines already warming up. One by one, the volunteers arrived, each carrying a single bag, each wearing civilian clothes that made them look like tourists or business travelers. Mason Brooks arrived wearing jeans and a polo shirt, his military bearing barely concealed. The transformation from the swaggering sergeant of the previous night was remarkable. His eyes were focused, humble, determined. Blake Turner came next, followed by Amber Cross. Both had spent the morning writing letters to their families, just in case. It was a sobering ritual that every special operations soldier knew well. Floyd Jackson looked younger out of uniform, his civilian clothes revealing a lean, athletic build that his master sergeant uniform had hidden. Connor Hayes looked even younger, like a college kid on spring break rather than a soldier about to embark on a classified mission. Morrison was the last to arrive, carrying a worn duffel bag that looked like it had seen action in multiple conflicts. "Haven't carried this since Mogadishu," he said quietly to Hazel. "Hoped I'd never need to again." "We go where we're needed, Jack," Hazel replied. "That never changes." As they boarded the aircraft, Hazel noticed something interesting. Without being told, without any formal hierarchy being established, the group had unconsciously arranged themselves with the three who had assaulted her at the rear, the volunteers who had shown good judgment in the middle, and Connor Hayes, despite his junior rank, near the front. It was a natural sorting based on trust and respect, not rank or seniority. The flight to Mumbai would take 22 hours with refueling stops. As the C-130 lifted off, Hazel stood in the cargo area that served as their temporary briefing room. "Listen up," she began, her voice carrying easily over the engine noise. "What you're about to hear doesn't exist. This conversation never happened. The mission I'm about to describe is completely deniable. Everyone tracking? Nods all around." She pulled out a tablet, projecting images onto a small screen she'd set up. The first image showed a luxury hotel in Mumbai, the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel. 5 days from now, there's an international trade summit, 1,500 delegates from 40 countries, including 300 Americans, CEOs, diplomats, trade representatives. The next image showed architectural blueprints. Intelligence indicates 3 potential attack vectors. We don't know which one they'll use, or if they'll use all 3 simultaneously. Floyd studied the blueprints intently. "Ma'am, that's a lot of ground to cover with 11 people. Which is why we're not doing this alone." Hazel swiped to the next image. "We'll be linking up with assets already in place. Indian Special Forces, specifically the Marine Commandos, Marcos. They're good, but they need our specific expertise." "What expertise is that exactly?" Amber asked. "Ghost Unit 7 specializes in prevention rather than response. We stop attacks before they happen, using methods that conventional forces can't or won't employ." She brought up another image, this one of a man's face. Middle Eastern features, early 40s, intelligent eyes. Rashid Al-Mahmoud, former Pakistani ISI, went rogue 6 years ago. He's been planning something big, and we think Mumbai is it. Mason studied the photo. "He looks familiar. Wasn't he involved in the 2008 attacks?" "Peripheral player then. Main player now." Hazel's expression darkened. "He learns from his mistakes. Whatever he's planning won't be a repeat of 2008. It'll be worse." The cabin fell silent as the implications sank in. The 2008 Mumbai attacks had killed 166 people and wounded over 300. If Al-Mahmoud was planning something worse... "Ma'am," Connor raised his hand tentatively. "Why us? I mean, why this specific group?" Hazel smiled slightly. "Because, Private, you're all compromised." The statement hung in the air like a challenge. "The 3 who attacked me are facing career-ending consequences. The rest of you just heard classified information above your clearance level. You're all now tied to a mission that doesn't officially exist. If any of you are captured or killed, the government will deny knowing you. Your families will be told you died in a training accident." She paused, letting that sink in. "But that also makes you perfect. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. You're not on any watch lists. Al-Mahmoud's network doesn't know you exist. And most importantly, you all have something to prove." Blake Turner shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, about last night." "Last night is done," Hazel cut him off. "What matters is the next 48 hours. You want redemption? This is it. You want to prove you deserve the uniform? Here's your chance. But understand, this isn't a movie. People will die. Maybe some of us. Maybe all of us. Anyone wants out? Say so now. We can turn this plane around." No one spoke. "Good." She turned off the projection. "Get some rest. When we land, we hit the ground running." As the team settled in for the long flight, Morrison moved to sit next to Hazel. "Ghost Unit 7, he said quietly. "I've heard whispers. Thought it was a myth. Most people do, that's the point. And you're really an admiral, at your age?" Hazel stared out the small window at the darkness beyond. "Age is relative in our business, Jack. I've been operational since I was 18. 15 years of constant deployments, black ops, wet work. I've lived more lifetimes than most people twice my age. What's your real name?" "It's not Hazel Mitchell, is it?" She turned to him, and for a moment Morrison saw something in her eyes, a depth of experience and pain that seemed impossible for someone so young. "Hazel Mitchell is as real as it needs to be. The woman I was before, she died in a basement in Aleppo 6 years ago. What crawled out was something else." Morrison knew not to push further. Every special operator had their breaking point story, the mission that changed them fundamentally. Some talked about it, Most didn't. 20 hours later, the C-130 began its descent into Mumbai. The city sprawled beneath them like a living organism, 20 million souls packed into 233 square miles. Somewhere in that maze of humanity, Al-Mahmoud was preparing his attack. They landed at a military airfield outside the city, away from commercial traffic. 3 vehicles were waiting, unmarked vans that looked like they belonged to a construction company. The Indian contact was a woman in her 40s, wearing civilian clothes but carrying herself with military precision. Commander Priya Sharma, Marcos, she introduced herself to Hazel, deliberately not saluting. Your reputation precedes you, Admiral. No ranks here, Hazel replied. I'm Sarah. This is my team. Priya's eyes swept over the group, clearly evaluating. Her gaze lingered on Connor, the youngest, and the 3 who still carried themselves with the stiffness of shame. This is your elite team? They're exactly what we need, Hazel said firmly. Trust me. The ride into Mumbai was a sensory assault. The heat, even at night, was oppressive. The smells, spices, exhaust, humanity, overwhelmed. The noise was constant, a cacophony of horns, voices, and life. For soldiers used to the structured environment of Fort Bragg, it was disorienting. They were taken to a safe house in Bandra, a middle-class neighborhood where foreigners wouldn't stand out too much. The house was nondescript from the outside, but inside was equipped with sophisticated surveillance equipment, weapons caches, and secure communications. Brief us, Hazel said as soon as they were secure. Priya pulled up a holographic display, technology that even Floyd, with his intelligence background, hadn't seen before. 3 days ago, we intercepted this. An audio file played, voices speaking in Urdu, but with subtitles appearing in English. The conversation was about packages being moved into position, about the anniversary gift being prepared. Anniversary? Floyd asked. Tomorrow is the anniversary of Al-Mahmoud's brother's death. He was killed in a drone strike 5 years ago, a strike that was based on intelligence from a trade conference in Dubai. The pieces clicked together. He's going for poetic justice, Mason said. Trade summit for trade summit. Exactly. Priya brought up building schematics. The Taj Hotel has upgraded security since 2008, but there are still vulnerabilities. Service entrances, staff turnover, the sheer number of people coming and going. What about the other 2 attack vectors? Amber asked. The conference center itself, and the transport routes between the airport and the hotels. We have teams on all 3, but we're stretched thin. Hazel studied the displays intently. He won't hit all 3. That's not his style. He wants maximum impact with minimum resources. The question is, which one? She turned to Connor. You're thinking something. What is it? Connor looked surprised to be asked, but spoke up. Ma'am, Sarah, if I wanted to make a statement, I wouldn't just go for body count. I'd go for symbolism. The Taj was hit in 2008. Hitting it again would show that nothing's changed, that nowhere is safe. Kid's got a point, Morrison agreed, but Hazel was shaking her head. That's what he wants us to think. Al-Mahmoud doesn't repeat himself. He evolves. She turned to the 3 who had assaulted her. You 3 have been quiet. Thoughts? Blake cleared his throat. The transport routes are too variable, too many unknowns. The conference center is a hard target, lots of security. But the hotel, he paused, thinking. What if the attack isn't on the hotel, but from it? Everyone turned to look at him. Think about it, Blake continued, gaining confidence. Everyone's expecting an attack on the summit. Security is focused on keeping threats out. But what if the threat is already inside? Hazel smiled, the first genuine smile any of them had seen from her. Now you're thinking like Ghost Unit, the hotel staff. Priya's face paled. There are over 1,500 staff members. We can't vet them all in 48 hours. We don't have to, Hazel said. We just have to think like Al-Mahmoud. He needs people who can move freely, who have access to restricted areas, who won't be questioned. She turned to her tablet, fingers flying across the surface. Pull up all staff hired in the last 6 months. Cross-reference with anyone who had family members killed or injured in drone strikes, military operations, or counter-terrorism raids. The computer worked for several seconds, then produced a list, 47 names. Still too many, Floyd said. Now narrow it down to those with access to the kitchen, laundry, or maintenance. Those are the departments that can move throughout the hotel without suspicion. The list dropped to 18. Check their work schedules. Who's scheduled to work during the summit? 12 names. Who among those requested to work those specific shifts? 4 names appeared on the screen. 3 men, 1 woman, all hired within the last 4 months. All with clean background checks but family connections to various militant groups. There's our cell, Hazel said quietly. Morrison whistled low. 4 people can't take down a hotel. They can if they're not trying to take it down, Hazel replied. Blake was right. This isn't an assault. It's something else. She stood and began pacing, a habit her old team would have recognized as her processing mode. Al-Mahmoud lost his brother to a drone strike that was authorized based on intelligence gathered at a trade summit. He doesn't just want to kill people at another trade summit. He wants to destroy the very concept of international cooperation. Chemical weapons? Amber suggested, her medical training making her think of worst-case scenarios. No, too indiscriminate. He wants to target specific people. Hazel stopped pacing. Assassination? Multiple, simultaneous, precision assassinations of key figures, making it look like various groups are responsible. Turn allies against each other, destroy trust between nations. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If successful, such an attack could destabilize international relations for years. We need to get into that hotel, Hazel said, tonight. Security will be tight, Priya warned. The advance teams are already in place. Then we don't go as security. Hazel turned to her team. We go as staff. Priya, can you get us uniforms, IDs? Within 2 hours. Do it. She turned to the team. Mason, Blake, Turner, you 3 are maintenance. You know systems, can move anywhere. Floyd, Morrison, your senior kitchen staff supervising final preparations. Amber, your medical staff, on hand for emergencies. Connor, your IT support, there to ensure communications work. What about you? Connor asked. I'm going to be someone Al-Mahmoud won't expect, she smiled coldly. A wedding planner. The hotel has 3 high-profile weddings this week. Perfect cover for someone who needs to be everywhere, checking everything. Mason raised his hand. Sarah, we don't speak Hindi or Marathi. Most hotel staff speak English. It's an international venue. Just keep conversations minimal and technical. Over the next 2 hours, they transformed. Uniforms were procured, IDs created, cover stories rehearsed. As they prepared, Hazel pulled the 3 former antagonists aside. You 3 have the hardest job. Maintenance has access to everything. Electrical, plumbing, HVAC. If they're planning something, it'll likely involve those systems. I need you to find it and stop it without alerting them that we're on to them. Ma'am, Mason said, then caught himself. Sarah, why trust us with this? Because you have the most to prove. That makes you the most motivated. She looked each of them in the eye. Last night, you failed a test of character. Tonight, you get to take a different test. Don't fail this one. At 11 p.m., they entered the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel through various entrances, spacing their arrivals to avoid suspicion. The hotel was a maze of corridors, service areas, and grand spaces. Over 560 rooms, 46 suites, and countless conference areas, restaurants, and facilities. Connor, in his IT support role, set up in the security center, ostensibly to check the conference communication systems. His real job was to hack into the hotel's internal surveillance and give the team eyes everywhere. "Com check," his voice came through their concealed earpieces. "Mason here, in the mechanical rooms. Blake, checking electrical panels. Amber, medical station. Floyd, Morrison, in kitchen. This place is massive. Sarah in position," Hazel's voice was last. "Game on, people." For the next 3 hours they searched. Every room, every system, every possible hiding place. It was tedious, nerve-wracking work. Every staff member they passed could be an enemy. Every locked door could hide a weapon. It was Blake who found the first clue. "Sarah, North Mechanical Room. You need to see this." Hazel made her way there, maintaining her cover by occasionally stopping to check flower arrangements and speaking rapidly into her phone about centerpieces. In the mechanical room, Blake showed her what he had found: 4 oxygen tanks, tucked behind legitimate equipment. But the gauges were wrong, the fittings non-standard. "Not oxygen," Hazel said quietly, examining them carefully. "The valves are designed for pressurized liquid, not gas." "Poison?" Mason asked, joining them. "No." Hazel's face was grim. "Accelerant, probably a binary compound. Harmless separately, but when mixed..." She didn't need to finish. "They're going to burn the place down?" Blake asked. Not burn, explode. These are connected to the HVAC system. They could pump this into specific rooms, then ignite remotely. Targeted assassination made to look like a terrorist bombing. Which rooms? Mason asked. asked. Hazel traced the pipes with her flashlight. Presidential suite, ambassador's suite, the Pearl Ballroom, and the kitchen. The kitchen? Why there? Because that's where the staff pre-meeting happens tomorrow morning. 300 hotel employees in one place. Maximum casualties, maximum chaos. They looked at each other, the weight of what they'd discovered settling on them. Do we disarm them now? Blake asked. No. If we do, they'll know we're onto them. They'll activate an alternate plan. Hazel thought rapidly. We need to identify all 4 cell members and neutralize them simultaneously. Connor, she spoke into her earpiece, pull up staff schedules. Who's working the 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift tomorrow in kitchen, maintenance, laundry, and concierge? There was a pause, then Connor's voice. Sending to your phone now? Hazel looked at the list. The 4 suspects were all scheduled, plus hundreds of others. We need to narrow it down. Connor, can you access their personnel files? Look for anyone who recently changed their shift requests. On it. Okay, interesting. 3 of our suspects all requested to work the breakfast setup. That's 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. The 4th requested security desk duty for the same time. Security desk? Morrison's voice came through. That doesn't make sense. But Hazel understood immediately. He's the trigger man. The others place the devices. He monitors and activates them. Probably has a dead man's switch. If he's compromised, everything goes up automatically. So we can't just arrest them, Floyd said. No, we have to be smarter. Hazel was already formulating a plan. Connor, can you create a feedback loop in the security cameras? Make it look like everything's normal while we operate? Give me 30 minutes. Mason, Blake, Amber, I need you to create identical dummy tanks. They need to look exactly like these, but filled with actual oxygen. Where do we get the materials? Amber asked. Hospital supply room, 3rd floor. Amber, that's your department. On it. Floyd, Morrison, I need you to identify which kitchen staff member is our inside man. Watch for anyone acting nervous, checking their phone repeatedly, avoiding certain areas. Understood. For the next 5 hours, they worked with the precision of a Swiss watch. The dummy tanks were created, using medical oxygen tanks and some creative welding by Mason. Connor created not just a feedback loop, but an entire false data stream that would show normal operations even as they moved. At 3:30 a.m., they were ready. Positions, Hazel commanded. Each team member was stationed near one of the 4 suspects. The plan was simple in concept, incredibly difficult in execution. They would neutralize all 4 simultaneously, replace the accelerant tanks with the dummies, and extract the suspects without anyone noticing. Remember, Hazel said, these people are willing to die for their cause. They won't surrender easily. The clock ticked toward 4 a.m. Hotel staff began arriving for the early shift, the kitchen coming alive with preparation for the breakfast service. Target 1 entering kitchen, Floyd reported. Target 2 in maintenance corridor, Mason confirmed. Target 3 in laundry, Amber said. Target 4 approaching security desk, Connor observed. On my mark, Hazel said. She was positioned in the security center, having convinced the night guard she needed to check arrangements for a wedding photo shoot. 3, 2, 1, mark. What happened next took exactly 90 seconds. Floyd accidentally bumped into Target 1, spilling coffee on him. In the confusion, Morrison applied a sleeper hold, rendering him unconscious in seconds. They dragged him into a supply closet. Mason and Blake cornered Target 2 in the mechanical room. The man reached for something in his pocket, presumably a detonator, but Mason's hand was faster. A brief silent struggle, and Target 2 was down. Amber used a more subtle approach with Target 3, approaching her with concerns about a medical emergency. When the woman turned, Amber injected her with a fast-acting sedative. She was unconscious before she hit the ground. Target 4 was the problem. He was already at the security desk, hand hovering over his phone. Connor had to act. He walked up casually, pretending to need help with a technical issue. As the man turned, Connor did something he had only learned the week before in an advanced training, a nerve strike to the neck that Floyd had taught him. The man's eyes rolled back, and he slumped forward. All targets down, Hazel confirmed. Switch the tanks, now! Mason and Blake ran through the mechanical spaces, replacing the 4 accelerant tanks with the oxygen dummies. It took them 12 minutes of frantic work, but they got it done. "Tank switched," Mason reported. "Exfil now," Hazel commanded. They moved the unconscious cell members out through service entrances, loading them into waiting vehicles that Priya had positioned. By 5 a.m., they were clear of the hotel. In the safe house, the 4 terrorists were secured in separate rooms. They would wake up in custody, their plan failed, their network exposed. "We did it," Connor breathed, hardly believing it. "The immediate threat is neutralized," Hazel corrected. "But Al-Mahmoud is still out there, and now he knows we're on to him." As if in response to her words, her secure phone rang. She answered it, listened for a moment, then her face went very still. "Understood," she said, then hung up. "What is it?" Morrison asked. "That was Langley. Satellite surveillance picked up Al-Mahmoud 30 minutes ago. He's not in Mumbai." "Where is he?" Hazel's expression was grim. "Fort Bragg." The room erupted in shocked exclamations. While they had been preventing an attack in Mumbai, Al-Mahmoud had traveled to the United States, to their home base. "It was a diversion," Mason said, understanding dawning. "Mumbai was never the real target." "No," Hazel agreed. "It was meant to draw away anyone who might stop him. The real target is the Special Operations Command Conference happening at Bragg tomorrow. Every Special Ops commander in the U.S. military will be there." "We have to get back," Floyd said. "We can't. It's a 22-hour flight. The conference starts in 18 hours. So we're stuck here while—" "No," Hazel interrupted. "We're not stuck. We're exactly where Al-Mahmoud doesn't expect us to be. Connor, can you establish a secure connection to Fort Bragg's systems from here?" Connor looked uncertain. "Maybe, but the latency would be—" "Do it. Morrison, contact whoever you still trust at Bragg, quietly. We need eyes on the ground. Mason, Blake, Amber, you know that base better than anyone. Think. If you were going to attack it, how would you do it?" For the next hour, they worked the problem. Connor managed to establish a connection, giving them limited access to Fort Bragg's security systems. Morrison reached out to trusted contacts, gathering intelligence without raising alarms. It was Amber who had the breakthrough. "The medical center," she said suddenly. "There's a major blood drive scheduled for tomorrow, mandatory for all personnel attending the conference." "So?" Blake asked. "So, everyone at that conference will have a needle in their arm at some point. If Al-Mahmoud has someone inside—" The implications were chilling. Poisoned blood supplies, contaminated needles, or even a biological agent introduced directly into the bloodstream of America's Special Operations leadership. "Connor, can you access the medical center's personnel files?" Hazel asked. "Already on it. There. 6 new hires in the last 2 months. All with clean backgrounds, but—" He paused. "One of them, Jennifer Woods, her credentials are too perfect. It's like someone created an ideal medical professional profile. That's our inside person. Morrison, can your contacts detain her without raising suspicion?" "I'll make the call." As Morrison worked his contacts, Hazel received another call. This one made her expression even grimmer. "Al-Mahmoud's been spotted. He's on base dressed as a contractor. Security doesn't know it's him. How much time do we have?" "The blood drive starts in 6 hours." Hazel made a decision. "Connor, I need you to do something that's completely illegal and could end your career. Can you remotely trigger a base-wide alert? Make it look like a system malfunction?" Connor swallowed hard. "That would evacuate the entire base. And cancel the conference. Al-Mahmoud's plan relies on timing. Disrupt that, and we buy time for the real security to find him. But the alert will be traced back to this connection. To me." "Yes." Connor looked around the room at his teammates. At Mason, Blake, and Amber, who had found redemption in service. At Floyd and Morrison, who had risked everything on an unsanctioned mission. At Hazel, who had given them all a second chance. Triggering alert in 3, 2, 1. Thousands of miles away, every alarm at Fort Bragg began screaming. The base went into immediate lockdown, all personnel evacuating to designated areas. The conference was canceled, the blood drive postponed, and security began a systematic sweep. They found Jennifer Woods trying to leave through a service gate. In her medical bag were 12 vials of what was later identified as a weaponized hemorrhagic virus. One drop in the blood supply would have been catastrophic. They found Al-Mahmoud 16 hours later, hiding in an abandoned building on the edge of the base. He was taken into custody without incident, his plan completely unraveled. Back in Mumbai, the team sat in exhausted silence. They had saved hundreds, possibly thousands of lives. But the cost was becoming clear. "Connor Hayes, you're under arrest for unauthorized access to military systems," Priya said formally, though her expression was sympathetic. "The Indian government has agreed to extradite you to face charges." Connor stood, ready to accept the consequences of his actions. "No," Hazel said quietly. "He was acting under my orders. If anyone gets arrested, it's me." "Ma'am," Connor started. "It's Admiral, actually," Hazel said, pulling out a different phone. She dialed a number from memory. "Mr. Secretary, this is Ghost Actual. Yes, sir, the situation is contained. I need a presidential pardon for my entire team. Yes, sir, I understand the implications. Thank you, sir." She hung up and looked at the shocked faces around her. "The Secretary of Defense sends his regards. You're all cleared, and there are commendations waiting when we get home." "Just like that?" Blake asked. "Just like that, though there is one condition." They waited. "You're all now members of Ghost Unit 7. Congratulations. You've been voluntold for the most dangerous, thankless, and important job in the military." Mason laughed, the first genuine laugh any of them had heard from him. "After the last 48 hours, ma'am, I can't imagine doing anything else." As they prepared to leave Mumbai, Hazel pulled the three former antagonists aside one more time. "You've proven yourselves," she said simply. "Your actions here saved lives and showed the kind of soldiers you really are. But remember, redemption isn't a destination. It's a journey. Every day you'll have to choose to be better than you were the day before." We understand, Admiral," Mason said. "And thank you for the second chance." "Don't thank me. Thank Private Hayes. He's the one who showed you what real courage looks like that night at Fort Bragg." As their plane lifted off from Mumbai, heading home, Connor found himself sitting next to Hazel. "Admiral, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Was this always the plan? The assessment at Bragg, choosing this specific team?" Hazel smiled mysteriously. "Connor, in this business, plans are just suggestions. But sometimes, when you put the right people in the wrong situation, they become exactly who they need to be. And the three who attacked you are now three of the most dedicated soldiers you'll ever serve with. They've seen their worst selves and chosen to be better. That's more valuable than any training." The plane flew on through the night, carrying 11 soldiers who had left Fort Bragg as individuals and were returning as a team. They didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. Ghost Unit 7 had been reborn, forged in the crucible of failure and redemption. 6 months later, a congressional hearing was held regarding the Mumbai incident. Officially, it never happened. Unofficially, it became a case study at every Special Operations Training Center. The lesson was simple. Sometimes the best teams aren't the ones with perfect records, but the ones with the most to prove. Mason Brooks, reduced to private after the Fort Bragg incident, was promoted to Sergeant First Class. Blake Turner received a Bronze Star. Amber Cross became the lead medical trainer for Ghost Unit operations. Floyd Jackson was commissioned as an officer. Morrison delayed his retirement indefinitely. Connor Hayes was fast-tracked to Special Forces training, and Admiral Hazel Mitchell? She disappeared again, becoming once more a ghost in the machine of American special operations. But sometimes, at military bases around the world, a small woman in civilian clothes would appear, looking lost and helpless. Smart commanders learned to treat every stranger with respect. You never knew when you were being tested. The Taj Mahal Palace Hotel in Mumbai added a plaque to their security center. It read simply, "To the unnamed heroes who protect the innocent." The hotel staff knew the truth, though they'd never speak it aloud. Al-Mahmood was tried in a closed military tribunal and sentenced to life in solitary confinement. During his interrogation, he said something that chilled everyone who heard it. "You stopped one plan. There are 99 more," which is why Ghost Unit 7 never disbanded, why they continued to operate in the shadows, preventing attacks that would never make the news, why 11 soldiers who had found each other in the worst possible way became the best team America never knew it had. In her final report on the Fort Bragg assessment, Admiral Mitchell wrote, "The measure of a military is not its strength in victory, but its character in power. We must never forget that we exist to protect those who cannot protect themselves, whether they are foreign civilians or lost tourists at our own gates. The moment we forget this, we become the very thing we swore to fight against." The report was classified, but its message spread through unofficial channels. Military bases across the country began implementing new training programs focused on ethics and protection of civilians. The Mitchell Doctrine, as it became known, fundamentally changed how American forces thought about power and responsibility. But there were still questions that remained unanswered. During the flight back from Mumbai, Hazel had received another encrypted message. This one contained just coordinates and a date. The coordinates were for a location in Syria. The date was 3 weeks away. "Another mission?" Connor had asked, seeing her expression. "No," she'd replied quietly. An answer to an old question. The coordinates, she knew, marked the location where her predecessor in Ghost Unit 7 had disappeared 3 years earlier. The date was the anniversary of his last transmission. Someone wanted her to find him, or find what happened to him. As the plane descended toward Fort Bragg, Hazel made a decision. This new team had proven themselves in Mumbai. Perhaps they were ready for the truth about Ghost Unit 7, about why it really existed, about the enemy that even Al-Mahmoud feared. "Listen up," she said, getting everyone's attention. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this plane. Ghost Unit 7 wasn't created to fight terrorists or prevent attacks. Those are just side benefits. We were created to fight something else, something that infiltrated our own military at the highest levels." The team leaned in, sensing the gravity of what they were about to learn. 3 years ago, my predecessor, Admiral Marcus Stone, discovered evidence of a shadow organization within our own special operations community. People who were using their training and access to run black market operations, weapons, drugs, even human trafficking. When he got too close, he disappeared. "Disappeared?" Morrison asked. His last message contained one word: Hydra. "We think it's the code name for this organization, and we think they're still active." The implications were staggering. An enemy within, using American training and resources for criminal enterprises. The Fort Bragg assessment wasn't just about finding bad soldiers, Hazel continued. It was about identifying potential Hydra members, people who would abuse their power, who see civilians as lesser beings, who would put personal gain over duty. Mason's face paled. I thought you might be recruited by them, yes. Your behavior that night fit the profile, but your actions in Mumbai proved otherwise. Hydra members would never risk themselves for civilians. "So what now?" Floyd asked. "Now, we prepare. The Syria coordinates are our first real lead on Admiral Stone and possibly Hydra itself. But this is voluntary. Hydra has resources we can't imagine. They've killed anyone who has gotten close. If you want out, now's the time." No one moved. "All right then. Welcome to the real Ghost Unit 7. Our official mission is counterterrorism. Our real mission is to root out the cancer in our own ranks." As the plane touched down at Fort Bragg, each team member was processing this new information. They'd thought Mumbai was the big mission. They were wrong. It was just the audition. Connor looked out the window at the base where everything had started, where 3 soldiers had pushed a woman to the ground, not knowing they were setting in motion events that would change all their lives. "Admiral," he said, "that night, when they pushed you down, you could have identified yourself immediately. Why didn't you?" Hazel was quiet for a long moment. "Because, Private Hayes, sometimes you have to fall before you can rise. They needed to see their worst selves to become their best selves, and I needed to know who would stand up when everyone else stood by. You were looking for us all along. I was looking for people who could be more than what they were, who could transcend their failures and become something extraordinary." She looked at each team member. "I found them." The plane came to a stop. Outside, Fort Bragg looked exactly as it had when they left. But for the 11 people on that plane, everything had changed. They were no longer just soldiers. They were ghosts, protectors, the thin line between order and chaos. As they disembarked, Hazel's secure phone rang one more time. She listened, her expression unreadable. "Understood. Ghost Unit 7 is operational." She turned to her team. "We have 72 hours of leave. Rest, recover, prepare. After that, we disappear. From now on, we don't exist. Our successes will never be celebrated. Our failures will never be acknowledged. But what we do will keep millions safe." Mason stepped forward and, for the first time since that night at the Eagle's Nest, saluted her properly. "Admiral, it would be an honor to not exist with you." One by one, the others saluted as well. Even Connor, still technically just a private first class, stood at perfect attention. Hazel returned the salute, then did something unexpected. She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed her face. "The honor is mine. All of you showed me something in Mumbai. You showed me that redemption is possible, that people can change, that sometimes the worst moment of your life can lead to your best." As they walked away from the plane, Morrison fell into step beside Hazel. "That message you just got? New mission? New intelligence. The Syria site isn't abandoned. Thermal imaging shows 12 heat signatures. Either Admiral Stone is alive and has a team, or Hydra is using it as a base. Either way, we're walking into trouble." "Yes, but that's what we do, Jack. We walk into trouble so others can walk in peace." Behind them, the sun was setting over Fort Bragg, casting long shadows across the tarmac. 11 shadows that would soon disappear entirely, becoming ghosts in service of their country. They had started as strangers, some as enemies. They were ending as something more, a team, a family. Ghost Unit 7. The story of the night when soldiers knocked down the new girl would never be officially told. There would be no medals, no recognition, no parades. But in the shadows where they operated, it would become legend. The night when failure became opportunity, when redemption was offered and accepted, when 11 ordinary soldiers became extraordinary. And somewhere in Syria, in a bunker that shouldn't exist, Admiral Marcus Stone looked at a monitor showing the Fort Bragg tarmac. He watched Hazel and her team walking away from the plane. "They're coming," he said to the shadows behind him. "Good," a voice replied. "It's time they learned the truth, all of it. They're not ready. Nobody could be ready for this. They don't have to be ready, they just have to be willing." Stone turned from the monitor. His face was scarred, his hair gray where it had once been black. 3 years of captivity or 3 years of deep cover. Even he wasn't sure anymore. "Send the signal," he said finally. "Ghost Unit 7 has been reactivated. God help them." "God help us all," the voice replied. In Fort Bragg, as Hazel packed her gear for whatever came next, she found a note that hadn't been there before. Just 2 words in handwriting she recognized. Handwriting that belonged to a dead man. "Trust no one." She burned the note and continued packing. In 72 hours, she and her team would walk into what was certainly a trap, but that was the job. That was the oath. That was the price of being a ghost. Outside her window, Fort Bragg continued its evening routine. Soldiers trained, commands were given, life went on. None of them knew that their world had been saved twice in 1 week. None of them knew about Hydra, about the cancer growing in their midst. But Ghost Unit 7 knew, and that would have to be enough, for now. 3 days passed like lightning. Hazel spent the first 2 days studying data about Syria, satellite images, intelligence reports, and every clue about Admiral Stone. On the 3rd day, she called a full team meeting at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Fort Bragg. When Mason stepped inside, he recognized the difference immediately. This was no longer a simple briefing room. The entire wall was covered with maps of Syria, thermal images, underground bunker schematics. A long table displayed weapons and special operations equipment. Not standard military issue, but customized versions for covert operations. "We have a problem," Hazel began, wasting no time on pleasantries. She projected a satellite image onto the screen. "The Syria coordinates I mentioned? That's Bunker B7, a CIA facility abandoned after the Syrian civil war, or at least they want everyone to think it's abandoned." Connor stared intently at the thermal image. 12 heat signatures, but their movement patterns don't match civilians or regular military. "Exactly," Hazel nodded, impressed with Connor's observation skills. "They move in tactical formation, 3 groups of 4, rotating guard duty every 8 hours. That's special operations discipline." Blake leaned forward. "So, is Admiral Stone still alive?" "I don't know. Maybe one of those 12 is him, or..." She paused. "They're all Hydra, and they're waiting to trap us." Morrison drummed his fingers on the table, a habit when he was thinking. "If it's a trap, why would they reveal their location?" "Because Hydra wants to know who's hunting them," Floyd answered, his seasoned intelligence officer eyes sharp. "If we show up, they'll confirm Ghost Unit 7 is still operational. If we don't come, they know we're weak or have given up." "Or," Amber said slowly, "Admiral Stone is being held captive, and this is a real cry for help." Hazel let the silence settle for a few seconds, letting everyone process the possibilities. "All scenarios are possible. That's why we have to go. But this time is different from Mumbai. We have no local support, no safety net. If things go wrong, no one's coming to rescue us. She played a video on the screen. It was surveillance footage from 3 years ago. Admiral Marcus Stone walking into a building in Damascus. He looked directly at the camera for 1 second, then disappeared into the darkness. It was the last image of him. Admiral Stone discovered something, Hazel said. Something big enough that Hydra had to eliminate a senior admiral. Today I am going to tell you what he found. She opened a highly classified file. In 2019, the CIA noticed a strange pattern. American weapons stolen from bases in Iraq and Afghanistan were appearing on the black market, but in quantities too large to be the work of ordinary thieves. Military encryption devices, which only exist in special operations units, were being sold to insurgent groups. Mason felt a chill run down his spine. Someone from inside was supplying them. Not just one person, an entire network. Hazel moved to the next page. Admiral Stone followed the money trail. He discovered there was a shadow organization within the special operations community. Senior officers, intelligence personnel, even defense contractors. They used real missions to cover smuggling operations. Whenever there was an operation in a war zone, they'd lose weapons and equipment, then sell them. Profit? Connor asked. Over $2 billion in the past 4 years, Hazel replied. The number made everyone's jaws drop. Blake shook his head in disbelief. Who could hide an operation of that scale? People with access to everything. People who write reports, approve budgets, command units. Hazel paused, looking straight at the team. Admiral Stone believed there is at least one senior general in Hydra, maybe more, Morrison whispered in a low voice. A general? What does that mean for the chain of command? It means we can't trust anyone outside this group, Hazel said clearly. That's why Ghost Unit 7 exists outside the formal command structure. Only the Secretary of Defense and the President know what we really do. Amber sat up straight. So, what's the Syria mission really about? Infiltrate the bunker, find evidence of Hydra's operations, rescue Admiral Stone if he's alive, and most importantly, Hazel's voice became cold, identify the senior Hydra members. She switched to another slide displaying personnel files. These are the 5 main suspects. All generals or senior officers with access to special operations. One of them, or all of them, could be Hydra. Connor looked closely at the faces. These were people he had seen on TV, at press conferences, praised as heroes. Thinking that any of them could betray their country made his stomach turn. General Patrick Morrison, 3-star general, commander of Joint Special Operations Command, 42 years of service, decorated veteran. Hazel pointed to the first photo. He has access to every special ops mission worldwide. Any relation to Sergeant Major Morrison? Blake asked. Distant cousin, Morrison answered, his voice tight. I've met him twice, both times at military funerals. Hazel continued. General Sarah Chen, 2-star general, director of Defense Intelligence Agency. She controls information flow for all covert operations. The next face appeared. Admiral Richard Cross, 4-star admiral, former SEAL team commander, now serves on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Mason noticed something. Ma'am, that's Sergeant Cross's uncle. Amber's face went pale. He raised me after my parents died. He's the reason I joined the military. Hazel's expression softened slightly. I know, Amber, and I'm sorry, but we can't rule anyone out based on personal connections. Hydra counts on that. She moved to the 4th suspect. Colonel James Burke, Special Operations Command Europe, British-American dual national, perfect cover for international arms dealing. And the 5th? Floyd asked. Hazel hesitated for just a moment. Brigadier General David Jackson. The room went silent. Floyd's face showed no emotion, but his hands clenched into fists. Your brother, Connor said quietly. Half-brother, Floyd corrected, his voice strained. We haven't spoken in 15 years, not since he testified against me in a friendly fire investigation. An investigation that was later proven to be based on false evidence, Hazel added. Evidence that had conveniently cleared certain officers while scapegoating enlisted personnel. Floyd looked up sharply. You think Hydra was behind that? Admiral Stone did. He believed the investigation was designed to identify officers who would falsify reports for the right price. Those who passed the test were recruited into Hydra. The implications were staggering. Hydra hadn't just infiltrated the military. They'd been selecting and grooming members for over a decade. How do we proceed? Mason asked, his strategic mind already working the problem. Hazel pulled out a tablet. The Syria mission is a two-phase operation. Phase 1, infiltration and reconnaissance. We need eyes inside that bunker, hard evidence of what's happening there. Phase 2, extraction or elimination, depending on what we find. She brought up detailed schematics. The bunker has one main entrance, heavily guarded, but there's a secondary access point, an old ventilation shaft that was sealed during the war. Intelligence suggests it's been reopened. That's our way in, Blake said immediately. Small team, night insertion. Correct, but here's the complication. Hazel zoomed in on the bunker's interior. The facility has 12 levels. The thermal signatures we're tracking are all on level 3, but there's something on level 10 that's generating a massive power signature. Connor studied the data. That's enough power for a small data center, or a weapons lab, or a detention facility with advanced security systems, Amber suggested. Morrison leaned back, processing. So we have to get through 9 levels of potentially hostile territory to find out what's really going on. And do it without triggering any alarms, Hazel added. Because if Hydra knows we're there, they'll either destroy the evidence or collapse the entire bunker with us inside. When do we leave? Mason asked. 48 hours. That gives us 2 days to prepare, train, and plan every contingency. Hazel's eyes swept across the team. This is different from Mumbai. There, we had a clear objective and timeline. Here, we're walking into complete unknowns. The only thing we know for certain is that someone very dangerous wants us there. She stood and walked to a locked cabinet, pulling out 11 folders. These are your cover identities. For this mission, Ghost Unit 7 doesn't exist. You're private military contractors working for a shell company called Aegis International. Your mission, officially, is to survey abandoned facilities for potential hazmat cleanup contracts. Each team member took their folder. Inside were passports, driver's licenses, employment records, complete false identities that would hold up to moderate scrutiny. Study these tonight. Tomorrow, we do a full mission rehearsal. Day after, we deploy. Hazel paused. One more thing. If any of you are compromised, Ghost Unit 7 will not acknowledge you. Your families will be told you died in a training accident. The government will deny your existence. Standard deniable ops, Floyd said. We've all signed those waivers before. Not like this, Hazel said quietly. If Hydra captures you, they won't follow Geneva Convention rules. They'll torture you for information about Ghost Unit 7, then kill you and dispose of your body where it'll never be found. Admiral Stone's fate, whatever it is, could be yours. The weight of her words settled over the room like a shroud. Connor broke the silence. Ma'am, I need to ask, what makes you so sure Admiral Stone found something worth dying for? What if Hydra fed him false information to draw out Ghost Unit 7? It was a smart question, and Hazel respected Connor more for asking it. Because of this, she pulled up one final image. It was a photograph of a shipping container, open to reveal rows of Javelin anti-tank missiles, American military hardware worth millions. This photo was taken 6 days ago in Yemen. Those missiles were reported destroyed in a depot fire in Afghanistan 2 years ago. But here they are, about to be sold to Houthi rebels who will use them against Saudi forces and American advisors. She zoomed in on one of the missile cases. Stenciled on the side was a serial number. This particular missile was signed out to a special operations unit commanded by General Patrick Morrison. The after-action report said it was expended during a firefight, but it wasn't. Someone in that unit diverted it to the black market. How did you get this photo? Amber asked. Admiral Stone sent it to a dead drop 3 days before he disappeared. It was his insurance policy, proof that Hydra exists and operates at the highest levels. Mason studied the image intently. If we expose this, it'll trigger the biggest scandal in military history. Which is exactly why Hydra will kill anyone who tries, Hazel repeated. They have billions of dollars, countless assets, and people in positions of power. We have 11 people and the element of surprise. I like those odds, Morrison said with a grim smile. You shouldn't, Hazel said bluntly, but those are the odds we have. Over the next 2 days, the team trained with an intensity none of them had experienced before. They rehearsed the infiltration in a mock-up facility, practiced silent communication protocols, trained with weapons they'd never used, and studied every inch of the bunker's layout until they could navigate it blindfolded. On the final night before deployment, Hazel called them together one last time. "I want each of you to understand something," she began, her voice carrying the weight of command. "What we're about to do goes beyond duty, beyond orders, beyond patriotism. We're challenging a system that has protected itself for years. We're accusing heroes of treason. If we're wrong, our careers are over. If we're right, but can't prove it, our careers are over, and we might disappear like Admiral Stone." She looked at each team member in turn. "So I'm giving you one final chance to walk away. No judgment, no consequences. Just turn in your folder and walk out that door." No one moved. Hazel nodded slowly. "Then tomorrow, we become ghosts in truth. We disappear from the grid, from the system, from existence itself, and we don't come back until we have the truth about Hydra, or we don't come back at all." Mason raised his hand. "Ma'am, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. 3 weeks ago, I was the worst version of myself. I pushed you to the ground because I could, because I had the power and you didn't. Mumbai taught me what real strength is, protecting those who can't protect themselves. This mission?" He looked around at his teammates. "This is us, protecting everyone who wears this uniform honorably, everyone who trusts that their commanders have their backs. If we don't stop Hydra, who will?" Blake spoke up next. "I spent 6 years following orders without question. Mumbai taught me that sometimes you have to question everything. If generals can betray their country for profit, then the system is broken. We're the only ones outside that system." Amber was next. "Admiral Cross raised me, taught me honor, duty, sacrifice. If he's part of Hydra, then everything I believed was a lie. I need to know the truth, whatever it costs me." One by one, each team member stated their commitment. When it came to Connor's turn, the young private stood up straight. "I'm 21 years old. I've been in the Army for 2 years. I shouldn't be here, shouldn't be trusted with this. But you trusted me anyway, Admiral. You saw something in me when I tried to stop Mason that night. I don't know if I'm brave or just too stupid to be scared, but I'm not walking away." Hazel felt something she rarely allowed herself to feel: pride, not in their skills or training, but in their character. These 11 people, thrown together by circumstance and forged in the crucible of redemption, had become exactly what Ghost Unit 7 needed. "Then it's settled," she said. "We deploy at 0300. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we hunt Hydra." As the team dispersed to prepare their gear, Floyd approached Hazel privately. "You really think my brother is involved?" he asked quietly. "I think Admiral Stone thought so. And Stone was rarely wrong. If David is part of this," Floyd trailed off, unable to finish the thought. "If he is, then you'll have to make a choice," Hazel said gently. "Brother or duty, family or honor, no one will judge you either way." "You would," Floyd replied. "You'd judge me if I put family over stopping traitors." Hazel was quiet for a moment. "I had a sister once. She was killed in a terrorist attack in Kabul. I spent 2 years hunting the people responsible. When I finally found them, one of them was an American intelligence contractor who'd been feeding information to the Taliban for money. He'd been at my sister's wedding, smiled at her, wished her well, then sold the location of her convoy for $50,000. Floyd's eyes widened. "What did you do?" "I arrested him, testified at his trial, watched him get life in prison." Hazel's voice was hollow. "But every day I wish I'd killed him, put a bullet in his head and been done with it. I didn't, because that's not who we are. We're not executioners. We're soldiers. We follow the law, even when it protects monsters." "That must have been the hardest thing you ever did." "No," Hazel said quietly. "The hardest thing was telling my parents that the man who killed their daughter was someone we'd trusted. That the betrayal came from inside. That's what Hydra does. It turns our own against us. And if we don't stop them, how many more families will suffer like mine did?" Floyd nodded slowly, understanding the depth of Hazel's commitment. This wasn't just a mission for her. It was personal. At 0300, 11 figures in civilian clothes boarded an unmarked transport plane at Fort Bragg's auxiliary airfield. There were no ceremonies, no farewells, no official records. As far as the world was concerned, these people were on leave, scattered across the country visiting family. The flight to Syria would take 14 hours, with 2 refueling stops. As they lifted off, Hazel looked back at Fort Bragg one last time. She didn't know if she'd ever see it again. None of them did, but they flew into the darkness anyway. 11 ghosts hunting monsters who wore the faces of heroes.